Ben, thanks for coming onto the podcast.
You're very welcome. Great to be here.
Hey, without time stamping this episode too much, firstly, congratulations is in order for winning your second National Women's League title in New Zealand. So very well done on that.
Thank you very much. Yeah, first as a head coach, so it feels a bit better this time. But yeah, no, good achievement after a long year of football.
Yeah, I bet. So if we rewind maybe 12 months ago, or this time last year, you had an equally, or nearly quite as equal, successful season, winning the local league with a different club. Fast forward 12 months, you've won the National League with a change of clubs. So tell me about how that whole process over the off season went down.
Yeah, it was a very challenging time for me personally. So yeah, my wife and I were expecting our first child in January, and I think it was the October. So we just won the league in September time, and obviously we were just getting ready for National League with my old club, and then they informed me that they were going to go into a slightly different direction. And maybe put resources into other areas of the club, and unfortunately that meant my sort of day job, my full-time role, didn't exist anymore. So yeah, that was put me into a bit of a spot in terms of what do I do next really. And Auckland is not it's not England, if you know what I mean. It's not like a huge footballing market, so there's not too many roles that sort of fit my CV particularly well. But luckily, the Auckland United, the club that I'm at now, they were in a situation where they were looking for a new head coach, and yeah, the stars kind of aligned. Everything came together at roughly the right time, and yeah, it ended up transitioning across to Auckland United beginning of this last year, pretty much just as my son was born. So yeah, worked out quite well. Dodged the bullet from the wife, and yeah, it's been a hell of a year since.
The rest is history. So yeah, your old club, without giving away club titles, a lot of those players followed you across to the new club. So I'm really keen to find out as a coach, because I haven't experienced this, where I've transitioned from one club to another, bring in a whole group of players. You walk in on day one and you got half of the group that know you and you had won a league with, and then you got the other half that 2 months ago, 3 months ago were your rivals, and also half their teammates are rivals. How did you mesh those two groups together quickly in order to be obviously successful as the way you have?
Yeah, I suppose there's more spice added to it as well, because we actually faced each other in the Kate Shepherd Cup final, which this club actually won. So so they were really fierce rivals. So yeah, and a couple of months before, they were kicking patches out of each other on the field. So yeah, it was a bit of a unique situation, I guess. Like obviously with COVID these last couple of years, there's been a number of players, especially like Kiwis, like to get off and do their OEs and all that sort of stuff. And a number of girls in the Auckland United first team from last year were kind of looking to explore other options and go abroad, or a lot of them moving around for university and things like that. So it actually created quite a hole, I guess, in the sense that we ended up needing quite a few players. So yeah, a little bit of a unique situation where, yeah, by me coming in and obviously having those relationships with the girls from the previous club, worked out really well. And I think every year you're looking for that extra one or two players that's going to really expand on what you've got and help you push to that next level. And we were really kind of missing a solid centre back and a left winger, and it just so happened to be that two of the best ones in the league happened to already be here and playing. So from that regard, from a playing perspective, it was almost perfect, almost match made in heaven, if you will. In terms of like building those bridges and those relationships, I'll be honest, it's been a really challenging year. Like, it's not easy, obviously, trying to go from enemies to friends and in a quick turnaround. And, I think there's been some particular challenges around, obviously, just different cultures, if you know what I mean. Like, you've got the group that have been with me at the former club, like a lot of those girls I've personally coached now for nearly 7 or 8 years. So, yeah, there's obviously a very strong group there and a strong connection, and then there's a couple of the girls from over at this club that obviously have had their own experiences over the last couple of years with different coaches and different players, and trying to bring them two together was, and I'll be honest, continues to be still a bit of a challenge. I feel I feel like we're probably somewhere around 70 to 80% of there, if that makes sense. And some of that's to do with personalities we may need to make changes on next year. Some of that's just more time spent in that team building space at the beginning of next year. It's difficult to do that when you're in the middle of the season and you're kind of going from game to game. But it's not something I would recommend doing.
Lose
It's
anybody on the way, like through that?
a few. Like sadly, like you don't want to, and I think from my perspective as a coach, like you want to be as respectful to the people that have been at the club before, if you know what I mean. So I'm coming in as a new person to Auckland United, so there's a number of girls that you want to pay them the respect and give them the opportunity to show what they can do. It's always going to be a challenge when the team that's coming, or the players that are coming in have just won that league before, if you know what I mean. So they're obviously a good concentrate of players, and there was always going to be competition for places. And so it was a challenge, especially early on in the year. There's a couple of girls who probably could have stayed and played and made other choices. No one's playing at any other club, so from my perspective, that's like we didn't lose anyone to anyone else. They just obviously made other decisions in life. Like I say, whether it be travel or study or work or whatever it might be. So from that perspective, a bit of a positive. We didn't shed heaps of players, and then I think moving forward, like the academy space at Auckland United is incredibly strong. Like we've got so many good young players coming through, so it's really good to have that upward pressure as well coming through. And I think obviously something that the club's really aspiring to is having X amount of academy graduates in the first team, and that's something now for me moving forward. Is obviously that's my bigger part of my role now, is to integrate those players over the next 2, 3, 4 years, whatever it might be, to grow, to become an Auckland United team again, really, in terms of the development of the players anyway, rather than having these 12, 13 players, obviously, that have been developed at my previous clubs.
Yeah, right. Now that you get a chance to catch your breath and take stock of, obviously reflect on a great season and start to think about next. Probably 2 months of downtime. What goes through the life of the off season of a head coach these days? Is it get your feet up and get some sun? Is it get away and look at other sports? Is it starting to watch footage and do some recruitment? Is it planning pre-season? How are you going to spend the next few weeks?
Yeah, I suppose there's probably bits of all of that, apart from the sun part. So I'm going back to the UK. So originally from the UK, and I haven't been back home myself since I got married in 2019. So I have a lot of my family I haven't seen for 4 or 5 years now. So it's my son's first Christmas as well. So we're going to go back there. But obviously the beauty of that is that there's football pretty much everywhere and any time. So I've already got a few club visits lined up, which is really cool. So go and catch up with some old colleagues from years gone by, and try and immerse myself in a bit of football and culture back in England and Wales. So whilst also trying to balance, catching up with grandparents and doing all that fun stuff as well. So it's a bit of a unique opportunity. Like I said, I don't get a chance to go back there that often now. So I plan on making as much of that opportunity as I can, whilst also trying to, recharge the batteries and do a bit of planning ready for next year as well.
Yeah, nice. Hey, the key audience for this podcast would be, in my opinion at least, athletes that are trying to transition through that youth to senior phase, or high, performance to high performance, youth international to senior international. So players of a level of ability already across different sports. Coaches of that tier of player, but also coaches a little bit like yourself that are working through your own coaching pathway, hopefully to professional football or professional in their sport, or top tier Olympic Games coaching, as well as parents of these athletes. So I'm really keen just to dig a little bit deeper into your reflections and experience speaking through the lens of a coach. So if you had a group of athletes, and you probably have these sort of conversations on a daily or weekly basis with the players you work with, but what's the sort of the key messages for you to that type of player around things that they should be focusing on, or trying to making sure they're ticking off, to give themselves the best chance of moving through that youth to senior, that B international to A international type space?
Yeah, I think for me the biggest challenge is just helping players understand that not every journey is the same. and not every journey is linear. Like there's we've all seen examples of this, if you know what I mean, in terms of success comes to some very early and then obviously peters out, and then maybe they come back again later on, and other players obviously fail a lot early and then become a different type of player at the end of it, through that resilience and the lessons they've learned. So yeah, it's a challenge, and I think also we have a lot of discussions with players around like selections, especially for like internationals and stuff, because as coaches in the club environment, we can't control those conversations. We can't control who's going to pick you and what they're necessarily even looking for at times. So trying to help players understand that just because you miss out on X camp or whatever it might be, that's not the end of your journey. Like that's just a bump in the road, or do you know what I mean, a minor setback at the time. And it's all about how we can help them help themselves really understand that these things are going to happen, accepting it, then obviously looking to try and engage with as much of a process of getting feedback as to what they need to work on. And then obviously then it comes back to myself as a coach to then help them, work forward and then, hopefully resolve some of those things when the next, thing comes around.
Yeah, so you made a good point that everyone's journey is different, and those opportunities will present themselves at different times for different players. So if you were then thinking about speaking to coaches who work with this tier of player, thinking back on your own reflections, what sort of advice are you going to give to those people?
I think the one thing that I try not to do, as much as possible, is not to make any definitive sort of statements or promises, if you will, if you know what I mean. Like, again, I think it's also helping players understand that it's their journey. Like I can do as much as I can as a coach to support that, but they also need to do the work, if you know what I mean. So I've seen examples in the past where people will say, oh, if you do this and this will definitely happen, and like that's not going to be the way. Players want to hear that. Like a lot of players just want to be told what they need to do to get them to their next stage. The reality is they might do that and it might still not be enough. So, always, like I say, supporting that journey, helping them understand that, we can do as much as we can do, and obviously we'll keep working and helping them understand where they fall short and how we can help them improve. But yeah, like I say, the challenges sometimes don't resolve themselves, and I think by being as open and honest and being upfront with players is always going to be better than, like I say, trying to promise them the earth and then ultimately not being able to deliver, I guess.
Yeah, one of the things I see a lot is players saying, "Oh, I'm going to this club because I've been promised I'm going to start." I just can't understand how anybody can promise that. Like, you could be sick that week or not train, and you can still rock up and expect to start because you promised that I'd start. It just opens up a can of worms, and that's coaches trying to recruit players, and that's telling players sometimes what they hear. But that truthful honesty from a coach to a player is imperative in my opinion as well. What about thinking about yourself? Maybe I'll ask this to you, like, as a coach to a coach going through this stage as well. I know you're aspirational. You've had a pretty good level of success over a number of years now, and there's opportunities. Not necessarily saying a level above, but honors and opportunities that you would like to be involved with as a head coach. What's your reflections as a transition level coach, working and striving to move up that ladder?
Yeah, I think I find this a challenging conversation in many ways, because, like, for me, a lot of my success, I feel personally, isn't necessarily anything to do with trophies and medals. I take a lot of pride in the fact that I've got a number of players that have chosen to, because ultimately every player chooses, chosen to be coached by me for maybe 7-8 years now, which, like, is pretty unusual, in fairness. And to be fair, they could have made different other choices. So for me, like, that's a huge sense of pride personally, but those are the things that others aren't looking for, if you know what I mean, or isn't necessarily recognized. So if I'm looking to try and get to that next level, it's hard for me to articulate that as a level of success or a measure of success, whereas when people look at CVs and whatever, they're probably more interested in the National League title, to be honest. So yeah, I think for me, that's probably my biggest challenge as a coach, trying to get to that, whatever the next level is for me, is trying to, communicate my successes as I see them as successes. So, I think it's not unfair to say that I've probably had more players in age groups as a coach, as an individual, than most some federations have had in New Zealand over the last 8 or so years. But again, it's really hard for me to articulate that, and I'm not a particularly good self promoter either, which is probably something I need to improve at, to be honest, in order to help me get to that next level. But yeah, like I say, I suppose the thing is like I say, success comes in many forms, and for me, a lot of the things, again, I take the most pride from are things that probably people wouldn't even know or don't even think about. So like I say, maybe articulating that better and promoting myself in some sense might help me achieve those ones, but it's still something that I can obviously, go to bed at night and be happy with.
So when you sit in say an interview panel with, organization X offering role Y, how do you actively go about highlighting those other success measures, or are they less interested and just want to know what you've won as a team? Like, how have you felt that through your experience?
I feel like that by getting medals and trophies, if that makes sense, that I feel, and I could be wrong, but I feel like that's what opens the doors almost, if that makes sense. That's what piques people's interest. I think if you're putting a cover letter or something together, I think if it's ex-national titles and all this sort of stuff, I think there's a certain group of people who would look at that and see that as success. I don't, like I say, I'm not particularly good at, like I say, promoting myself and beating my own drum. I don't know whether that's a British thing or whether it's just me as a person, but I find it, like I say, hard to articulate that and to try and fully help people understand, I guess, or I don't know. I don't know. I'm a humble guy. I don't like to brag. So like I say, maybe it's not bragging. Maybe I should just take it for success and just celebrate that. But yeah,
it's a really interesting one. So a few years ago, I went for an interview for a national senior head coaching position. I didn't get the role, and I asked for some feedback, and one person came back and said, "Yep, let's set up a meeting and we'll go through your presentation and your CV." And the short of the long feedback from him was, "I'm on the panel. I want to know 3 things. I want to know what you've done, what you've won, and can you win here?" And that's kind of always resonated with me. It's like, there's certainly performance sport. There's an element of what have you succeeded in, and how are you going to do it here. But on the other side of things, in a role where I've recruited staff into this developmental space, which is different to the high performance space, I want to know who you've helped transition successfully to the next stage, and I want to know how you've done it. I don't care about your results. They kind of give you, as you said, maybe a bit of a foot in the door and piques people's interest, but it's about the process of what you've been able to do repeatedly, not just a one-off. And for me, that's one of the reasons why you've been on one of my staff, and a few other people, they've actually been successful, not so much in trophies, but in terms of developing the people around them. So so I don't think there's a hard and fast answer to the kind of this conversation. I think knowing what's in front of me, in terms of I'm talking to a panel that high performance is about Olympic medals, it's about outcomes. Talking about youth development, it's about process. It was a bit of in between. So good conversation though. The final kind of audience would be parents of these kids predominantly, and I think this is an area, and this is one of the main passions of this podcast, is we as coaches in particular separate away the parents and almost assume that they don't know what they're talking about, which is really dangerous, because kids will spend more time with the parents. They have their best interests in heart. As coaches, we have potentially a dozen or more kids where we're trying to balance that approach. So by not engaging the parents, I think is wrong, and it's a mistake. So if you had all of the parents of the players that you work with, you may even do this, you may get them together at the start of the season, but what would your messaging be to them in order to help you as a coach, but also help their son or daughter on this journey as well?
Yeah, and I'll probably look back on this in a couple of years when my son's playing and probably disagree with what I'm going to say, but who knows? Yeah, I think a bit of it is patience, if that makes sense. Like I think I've dealt with a lot of parents over the years that expect success yesterday for whatever reason, or they have a heightened sense of potentially their kid's ability at that point in time. And as I say often to parents, that's not to say that their potential ability or where they could get to is not in line with what their expectations might be, but at this point in time there might be other players ahead of them, or whatever it might be, in that space. And I think the other one is just making sure that the conversations you have with your children are framed around, like, did they enjoy it? Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not so much about, we've all seen that, the car ride home and all that sort of stuff. Like, yeah, I've seen numerous examples, or heard numerous examples, speak to so many players about this, about they get home and their parents, well, usually their dad, to be fair, tears strips off them because they did this, that, or the other, and it wasn't right, and all this sort of stuff. And then, the girl tries to explain to the dad, no, the coach actually wanted me to do that. So there's a little bit of a, you know what I mean? And like I say, some of that, maybe that's a disconnect, and that's something that we can potentially do better as coaches, if you know what I mean, helping those parents understand what is expected of their kids in games, maybe. But yeah, like I say, and this extends even to older girls, do you know what I mean? Like I know 20-odd-year-olds that are still having these conversations with their parents, and but the ones who tend to go the furthest, or the ones, well, no, that's probably not true actually. But yeah, the ones who tend to, you know what I mean, like be more balanced and level, are the ones that are obviously supported by the parents, and yeah, that want them to enjoy it, and then obviously progress and keep playing the sport. That's ultimately my goal at this stage, if you know what I mean, is yes, again, trophies are great, but ultimately I want all the girls to be playing for as long as they want to play for. I don't want them to give up the game because they don't enjoy it. And yeah, even for 15, 16-year-olds, that can often be a reason for giving up the game, is that they don't enjoy it because, yeah, their experience around football is not a positive one. And sometimes that can be, sometimes that can be coaches, but oftentimes you tend to find that it seems to be parents. So, and they don't know they're doing it, as you said before, like that, they're it's coming from a place of love. It's just a misunderstood how to express that, and how to help those kids, obviously, experience joy when they play football.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks for that. Right, on to the quick fire questions. Hopefully you're ready. Here we go. So firstly, pose one question to me, to the audience, that we can ponder on this week.
My question would be football related. So yeah, it's very football related. So like a lot of things I've done around, like I do a little bit of work around XG and stuff like that. Like, yeah, the question for me would be, like, in terms of stats, like, is the value of XG worth exploring? It's a simple one, but I think, yeah, it's something that we discuss a lot in the office, and I think it's an interesting point. Depends on your perspective, I think.
Yeah, it totally is. It's something we have a conversation with. I like XG saves actually as well, on the other end of that spectrum. But yeah, good one for people to think about is the value of XG in football. And if you're not a football person, go and quickly Google,
look it up.
Outline one concept or idea that we can potentially implement this week, or think about how we might be able to incorporate that into our lives.
For me, again, it's not necessarily football specific, but in terms of football anyway, it's around the concept of the infinite game. So it's something that sort of helped me, I guess, in my journey as a coach, not to get too caught up in one particular game. Ultimately, as and even in terms of club development and stuff like that, like, I suppose it's been proven in my old role, but one day you won't be there, but people will still carry on playing football, and the team will continue to exist. So it's around, trying to make as much of a mark, or a legacy, I guess, in the time that you have with those players in that space, whilst also being conscious that there's been a lot that's happened before and a lot that's to come in the future as well. So yeah, I think the infinite game is something that resonates with me.
Yeah, nice. I haven't heard it described as the infinite game before. I hear the All Blacks talk about leaving the shirt in a better place than you found it or picked it up.
Okay.
That kind of concept. Give us a recommendation of a book or a podcast, a TV series or movie that you could recommend to either athletes or coaches or even parents potentially of working through this transition space.
Yeah, I think again, like, my analyst background often comes into a bunch of these things, but I think there's a really interesting book called The Signal and the Noise by Nate Silver. Again, like former analyst, but it doesn't necessarily just focus on football. It sort of looks at sort of statistics in life, really, and a lot of it is sport focused. But you know what I mean. It kind of, there's some really interesting concepts in there, which don't ask me to say because I can't remember them. But there's a lot of things in that book that I have to reread it a couple of times, probably every year or two, just to really keep me on the level with it, because it's it's some really cool concepts in there just around life and probability and you know what I mean, like kind of helps me anyway, as someone who probably tries to overthink things, understand that there's an element of randomness in life, and that accepting that is also part of the journey, I guess.
Give us the name of it again.
The Signal and the Noise.
Nice one. What is one piece of advice that you had been once given that still resonates for you today?
There's probably quite a few that I couldn't say on a podcast, but I think it's a simple one, and it's one that, again, probably comes through to one of my points before, but I don't know. I think it was my granddad that once said it, but it's simple, but it's just be humble. Do you know what I mean? I've been lucky enough to have many great experiences in football. Football has been probably changed my life, in all fairness, best and where I would have ended up, if you know what I mean. And through working with the Welsh FA and TNS and stuff like that, I've been lucky to end up with 20 odd countries, working in football, and analysis has, ultimately ended up putting me in the role I am in today, and a wife, kids, and all the rest of it. And as I said, I don't brag about these things, and I don't probably talk about them as much as I should. So I think being humble is really important.
Nice. You like a Kumara, because the Kumara never says how sweet he is.
Never heard that one. Thanks, mate.
And finally, that was my quote. Leave us with a quote for the week.
It's hard to beat a person who never gives up.
Brilliant. Anyway, appreciate your time. It's been a great chat. I know everybody listening back will have taken out 2 or 3 different golden nuggets. I know I have. It's been a pleasure. Enjoy your little break, and look forward to catching up soon.
Much appreciated. Thanks, mate.
Thanks so much for sticking through to the end of this episode. It would mean the world to us if you could hit the like or share button, so we can get these amazing insights out to other like-minded coaches, athletes, and parents. Cheers.